Good morning. Thank you so much for coming to this podcast. I'm really glad to have you guys from S&K Consulting. Hello, Desma. Hello, Silba. Silba, I've always wondered, do I call you Elrona or do I call you Silba? So, what is it? Because I know your name is on the podcast as Elrona Silba. So, what do people call you?
So I say I have two avatars, and I respond to both. But most of the time in my work world, it's Elrona, and in my home world, it's Silba. But now they've all crossed over, so you know that's why it's Elrona Silba in my official, LinkedIn profile and things.
No, I think Elrona is a great name, and I think you should use it more often and make it more public. So, great. I think we'll call you Elrona for the podcast, even though I know you personally as Silba.
Well, thank
But
you for having us, Anthony. I think this is a great idea that you've, to come up with this podcast, because I do think it will help a lot of people, but I think it'll also, put a lot of facts in bring people's attention to a lot of facts that may seem obvious, but it's not really so obvious from our perspective.
Indeed. And I wanted to just kickstart this by saying to everybody who's listening. So the reason this podcast is being done today, guys, is because I've noticed over the last 6 months, ever since Corona started, and probably even before Corona started, we always, in every country in the world, especially in our region, you'll always have a lot of people looking for jobs in the regions which are hotbeds for immigration, for migration, for jobs, like especially the GCC. You'll always see more people looking for jobs than people in jobs, and that's natural. However, what I've also noticed is that in the world of social media, in the world of LinkedIn, in a world of a hyper-saturated job market like Dubai, for example, especially post-Corona, you have a lot of people looking for jobs, but they don't really know what's the best way to present themselves, to portray themselves, and to showcase themselves. You have very talented people, but not everybody, for example, is a self-marketer. Not everybody knows how to promote themselves. They're very good at what they do. An engineer, for example, his specific skill set is potentially project-based, engineering-based, mathematics-based. He's not necessarily a marketer, so maybe he doesn't know what to do when he has to put his CV together. And he just goes online and he'll download a template for a CV, or he'll see a friend, can you give me a CV? I want to copy it. And it's not the kind of CV or the content that will match up to his job profile or even the person who's trying to hire him. And so, I decided to put this podcast together and get two people who I really respect in the HR world, and who have tons of experience behind them, so that we can put together some advice for all of you. A lot of you may have seen on LinkedIn, and I know many of you are probably also frustrated by this fact. You'll see people posting a vacancy and you try to apply, but the HR manager doesn't respond to you, or you'll see that your comment is lost among 20,000 people saying interested. Please check my profile, which is also a very nonsense thing to do, by the way, if you're listening. So we're going to cover all of that, and we're going to try to give you the best advice we can collectively give, to help you to create a fantastic CV that actually makes people and hiring managers and recruitment managers sit up and take notice. But we're also going to give you advice on how to approach, how to present yourselves outside the CV, how to make yourself a desirable candidate. And we also, for want of a better phrase, kick you in the backside for all the mistakes you're probably making, because advice is only good if it's actually going to hurt you, because it needs to help you to understand what you're doing wrong, not only what you're doing right. And so if we appear to be harsh, it's for your own good. We want you all to get employed. We all want you to have a sustainable income and everything else. So with that in mind, my name is Anthony. I run the Marketing Dude podcast, where I bring my expertise in 22 years of working in the region, in Singapore, in the UK, in marketing and in other businesses. And now I'm in a position where I hire people. And so I'm going to give my advice on that. And I'd like to introduce now S&K Consulting. So Desma and Silba and Elrona, would you like to very quickly give a brief background about your company, as well as both of you, your own employment history, so that why should people listen to you? Over to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I think this is a very timely podcast, and I really, really hope it would help a lot of people. And I'm sure from questions that you get, and feedback that you get on the back of this, we can even plan to do future sessions, with more specifics that would help further. S&K Consulting is our little baby. It's a boutique HR consultancy that actually was started by Elrona about 5 years ago, when she was a team of one. So she was a freelancer working by herself and supporting clients by herself in a freelance capacity under the S&K Consulting banner. I joined S&K earlier this year after quitting my last role, which was the head of HR for a new hospital that was in Dubai. So I helped set up the hospital. It was a hospital and 2 clinics. And then once they opened, I quit. And I spent a year doing a number of other things, which is probably for a different conversation, but one of which is I joined Elrona or Silba. I'm going to refer to her as Silba because she's my sister and my business partner, which is also helps with the business side of it. So moving back, so I started with S&K earlier this year. And my background is that I've been in HR for over 15 years. I've worked with the likes of Etihad Airways, the Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, and more recently, King's College Hospital London in Dubai. And yeah, so I've, grown quite quickly through my career. I've been given amazing opportunities and I've worked with incredible people that have kind of taught me what really good HR looks like. So it was timely that I was able to join what Silba had already sort of set up and bring that knowledge to other consultancies. So at S&K, we want to change the landscape of HR in the GCC, one business at a time. It's a very bold vision, but we believe that we've made a promising start despite the circumstances around the world. And we are looking forward to kind of, pushing that through over the next few years.
Yeah. So this year, S&K Consulting, I have doubled my team because I'm no longer a team of one and a company of two now. So this has been a very exciting year for us to actually formalize S&K Consulting as a boutique HR consultancy and define what we do as part of the business services. So my background is also in HR, but in a different industry and across the Middle East as well. I've been working in HR for the past 20 years. I knew I wanted to do HR maybe when I was even in grade 12. So that's where the passion comes from. So it's always been about HR. And I think I'm one of the fortunate ones who were able to, use my education and go into a field that I studied for. So I did my master's and my HR certification to kind of, strengthen the experience and the knowledge when it comes to HR. And in 20 years of lifetime, boy, have I done a lot of recruitment. In fact, started my first 2 years was as a recruitment consultant for an agency. And then after that, even when I was within in-house HR, as we call it, I've done a lot of recruitment because I worked with project-oriented organizations. So there was a lot of recruitment every time we got new projects. And I've recruited across the length and breadth of candidates, whether it's technicians to engineers to office-based jobs to sales, marketing, medical reps, all sorts. So quite rich in terms of recruitment experience as an HR professional. As a candidate, I was quite fortunate to have given good opportunities. In fact, I got my first job in one day, but yeah, so that's a story on its own. But there were some key things that I picked up that I would like to share as well during this podcast, as a candidate as well as a experienced recruiter.
This is all fantastic. I think this is exactly what people need to know, that you're speaking to authentic HR people who are not part of these massive recruitment agencies where you are just a number and you're just candidate number 4. You're not actually, Muhammad or Albert or whatever, So I think this is good. It's a good, yeah, you're just a database. And that's a lot of people feel like that, especially if you look at some of the bigger recruitment agencies in Dubai. When you apply, you realize that, you see that there's 700 people who have applied for a job. You're like, I'm just one of those 700 people. I'm not going to be taken seriously. And I think a lot of people have started to feel that way. So let's get into the first question about the whole market situation right now. You have two things to look at. One is because of the sheer thousands upon thousands and maybe tens of thousands of people who have either lost their jobs, resigned, or have been let go because of company closures or cost cutting in the region as well as outside the region. you have that market where you have a lot of people who just don't have jobs anymore, and they used to have jobs. So now they're struggling to find a job. And then you have the other side, which is, people who still have jobs, but they need to leave because they've been told that, the company might shut down. The company is not doing so well. They're cost cutting. So you need to, we're giving you 2 months to find something. So you have this whole market right now. What do from your experience so far, and you're talking to companies, you're talking to clients, you're talking to people, what is the prevailing mindset in the market from candidates when it comes to the whole situation of pre-corona and post-corona? Because, post-corona, I say post-corona, we don't know when this is going to end. But at the moment, the markets have opened up. So you have this heavily saturated market where every single job vacancy has maybe 10,000 potential applicants. So you have a heavily saturated market as well. So what is your opinion about the prevailing mindset in the market right now?
Anthony, I want to just point out something. What I tend to do is I differentiate between two types of people out there. One are the job seekers, the ones that have been, either made redundant or lost their job or been asked, like you portrayed. The others are candidates. Those are the ones that are actively applying for jobs, and the behaviors are slightly different just by that. And I would like to point out that there are tens of thousands of job seekers, but there are not that many candidates. To give you an example, I was recently doing a recruitment, and I went on LinkedIn. We advertised, and we didn't get much response. And what I did is I went and looked at just a lot of people put their status saying looking for opportunity, and I must have found around 150 people that have put that as their status. But when I reached out to them, none of, I could say 10 responded. So I think, as a job seeker, yes, there are many, but as candidates, they're not that active. This is my ad hoc one-off opinion. So when I want to talk about like job seekers, then, that makes a little more sense. Yeah, so there are jobs being advertised. I've seen them in different job portals. I don't know what the uptake in terms of candidates applying are, but I know there are also a lot of job seekers out there looking for the next employment. So it's time they transition, I think, from a job seeker.
I think
yeah.
Question on the market itself, I think you're right in terms of the fact that the market has opened up. I don't like you said, I don't necessarily know if that's post-COVID already, but I'd also like to see it as the market is, it's not closed and open, it's going through a transformation of sorts. Businesses are reevaluating how they want to conduct business in terms of how they want to hire people, and they're looking at their structures and things like that. And that has, obviously led to a lot of redundancies. And yes, the market has a lot of talent in it. But I think people, I say this, how do I explain it? Like, people are so shocked that they are in this position that they're unable to kind of make the next step, which is become a candidate and actively look to, what's the best way to make myself stand out among the pool of applicants. What they're focusing on is, wallowing in the, sometimes for good reason.
Self-pity.
Yeah, self-pity. And I appreciate that, and I understand that. But, if you're not going to make your next move, you're really not going to make any progress. So,
Indeed.
So I understand the situation, and I really, really understand that people are in difficult situations, but you have to do something. And so going back to what Elrona was saying earlier is, change your approach from just being a job seeker, because nobody's going to come and give it to you on a silver platter. You have to do something. And what you have to do is be responsive and, sit down and think about everything that you need to do and then do it.
Very, very well put. I think, and that's a different conversation about the person's own thing, and we'll get to that in a moment. Is the self activation. But coming to, again, I just wanted to stress in the market as well. What is, as you're talking to clients as well? When I say clients, I'm talking about companies that are hiring.
Yeah.
So in your conversations with companies, then what is their perception of the market in terms of so many candidates versus so many job seekers versus finding the right candidate? What is the prevailing mindset from the company side?
So it depends on the type of company, right? So most companies understand that there is a lot of talent in the market, and they are actually very keen to to hire and then move very, very quickly. So when we give them timelines like we would normally give, a lot of them say, well, won't candidates be available to start very quickly? And again, this goes back to the difference between being a job seeker and a candidate. So even if somebody is up for a role and they're going through the hiring process, the moment they become a candidate, there's such a drastic shift in behaviors that ends up slowing down the hiring process. So the companies that are actively hiring, they're very keen to move quite quickly, but the response from the candidates is not the same.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
And I think it is an employer's market at the moment. So, you have to recognize that your capacity or the employer's appetite for negotiation is also limited. And, there was a time when there was a scarcity of talent. So we had one candidate that would make the cut, and, we would rely on that candidate to accept the job. But now we could have 2 or 3 candidates in the pipeline so if one doesn't, then we have the next one, because that's how quickly companies move ahead. So they're, I would say, candidate agnostic, like they're not looking for the one talent, but they're looking to move on, start, new jobs, new roles, because a lot of pivoting, a lot of innovation has also happened. So while they might have, right-sized their organization and made a few divisions redundant, that jobs are coming out. And yes, a lot of companies have also shared that they have done some hiring freezes. And maybe if somebody has decided to go back, they're not replacing that role and kind of spreading the tasks amongst the rest of the team. But where there are opportunities, the candidate behavior still has, I would say, room for improvement.
Having said that, I just want to clarify that, if this comes across as a candidate bashing session, it's not. It's just providing constructive criticism to say, here's how, here's what you need to think about when you are applying for a role. You just need to think about the context of, your application, i.e. the market, i.e. the availability of talent, the time, etc. So it's just, the intention is to give candidates context of how they would come across.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of candidates need to understand is that looking for a job is a job. You can't treat it as a half an hour that you spend online. You have to treat it as a full-time job until you get the job you're looking for. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of thinking, a lot of networking, exactly what you would do if you were in a job itself. So people need to understand you need to treat it that way and not just think, okay, honey, I've just spent 1 hour sending my CV, I'm done. That's my job seeking. No, it's not that actually.
No. And having said that as well, like we have come across some candidates that are so amazing. Yeah. They're so talented, in how they present themselves and the work that they've done, in their follow-up and their responses. We have sometimes thought, we're like, oh, damn it, I wish we could hire this person for our own company. That's how incredible they are. And that's because they've done these little things to kind of stand out. So the next time an opportunity comes our way, guess who we're going to go back to?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And
for those fantastic candidates, we have gone the extra mile to tell our clients, like, you have to meet this person, like we don't take no for an answer, because we believe this candidate far more than maybe the company sees on an application or a CV. Because we've spoken to this person, we've screened this person. And, if our relationship with our client is good, like the way we usually have, they take us up on it. And then we've actually, had people select them.
Yeah, in fact, the last candidate we placed, the client categorically said no. Like they did not want to move beyond the first screening stage. So we had screened the candidate and we said this was an excellent candidate. And the client said, no, doesn't meet our requirements. And it was, a week later, I think it took us a week or a couple of weeks to convince them to say, look, you have to see this candidate. We believe that this person would be a right fit not for the role, but also for the organization you guys need. The client ended up creating a new role. That's how good the candidate was. Yeah. And so, we promote talent when we see it.
Yeah. And I think that's not just us. Any recruiter, any HR professional who is intent to close the vacancy and give the business the talent that they need is going to do the same thing. If there is a good candidate out there, we know how, the shelf life of candidates is very, very short. So when we see a good candidate, we, go the extra mile to make sure that this candidate is seen, is assessed, and, if that person is the right person, then we, make sure that we make that happen.
Yeah, the candidate should get a fair chance if you're a good candidate, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah, okay. So now we've been talking about the candidates. Let's get into the meat of the actual discussion that we want to help people. First off, let's go to the number one thing that everyone turns to, which is the CV or the resume. Now, the resume, I think, in this world has become the most battered and most overdone and most confusing aspect of a job market, because you have these millions upon millions of different kinds of templates that people have used. You have cliches, copy, you have how putting the right photograph, the fonts, the design. You also have content where people don't really know what to put. They're just putting what everyone else puts, or they think they should be put there. And in the end, you have this whole mess that has happened when it comes to resumes, and people don't know what to do. Plus, you have the added disadvantage of creating a good resume, but then when you actually apply to the company site, they have an ATS system where you have to fill in everything once and again and one by one. And some of them don't have the space for the kind of description you put in your CV, which actually explains what you've done in your job. And so you have this unfortunate disadvantage where what companies are putting on their website for job seeking when you're putting on the application form, and what you're supposed to be putting in your CV. So nobody knows what to do, right? So let's talk about the CV now. What, in your opinion, has been when it comes to CVs? We'll talk about what a candidate should look at. What should a candidate put above all, the most important top three things? If a candidate had only one page to work with, what should they put on their CV?
This is why we say looking for a job is a full-time job, because not one, every client's requirements are unique or different. And, you need to make the time to match that requirement so that, you have done the best you could do. And there are some golden rules, I think, that you could, use. So you started off by saying you have one page,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So I think first and foremost, keep the language simple, so that it's easy to read. The general rule of thumb is recruiters have a very less, they scan CVs and probably take less than 40 seconds or 90 seconds to read a CV. So, you need to make that impact. And you have to get creative in how that one page is utilized, but at the same time, keep it, not too cluttered, not too word heavy, and try and showcase your skills. So I think there are some things that should be there. Obviously, your name. There was a time when objectives, what was your objective, was important, but I don't think that's so important anymore, at least for us. I think your skills, your job skills that you think you are proficient in, probably put that up there. Some of your career achievements, and don't make it like a laundry list of like 10, 15. Just pick 4 or 5 that are appropriate to that job that you're applying for. You might have lots of achievements, right? But you have to showcase the ones that are relevant to the job you're applying for, and then your experiences as well. But I don't think you could have a CV template that you shoot off to every job that you apply for if you really want to be a candidate that stands out. I think you'll have to tweak your CVs or your resume based on the job you apply for. And that does take a lot of work, no doubt, but that's what you need to do now to be able to stand out.
Yeah, I think all of that. And, what I would add is a few things. So number one, your CV should be visually appealing,
Correct.
with a lot of formats available. And there's very simple tools, like you can use PowerPoint and Word and Canva, and that, you don't even have to pay for it. You can use a free version of Canva, or just like Google, CV templates, and you can recreate something that's visually appealing. And that straight away says that you have made an extra effort, and it's just not a black and white kind of typical CV from like 20 years ago. So that's number one. Number two is to make sure that your information, your personal information, i.e. your telephone number and your email address is correct. So a lot of times,
Wow, really?
Yeah, you'll be surprised.
so a lot of time candidates either forget to put on a telephone number or an email address. And I know this is so basic, which is why it's shocking when we see a CV and there's no way to get in touch with the candidate. So yes, so they absolutely need to make sure that the number and the email address is correct. And this could mean like asking somebody to review the CV just to make sure that this information is correct. So that's number two. Number three, I would say is like Silba said, is to ensure that the information that you've put on the CV in terms of your previous roles or your education or your skills is relevant to the job that you're applying for. If you provide a laundry list of everything you have done, you're definitely not moving forward. If you demonstrate that you have put in an effort to match your CV to apply for a role, look at the job description of the role and tweak your CV to match it. And if you don't know what the job description is, or if you want clarifications, reach out to the recruiter. We would really appreciate that if a candidate calls us to say, look, I've seen this job. I'm really interested in it. And I understand, I think I have all these requirements. Is there anything else that you're specifically looking for? Just that one kind of effort to do something different stands out. And you could argue that recruiters don't have time and things like that, but this is the effort that you have to make. And if they don't have time, then do the best you can. But yeah, so these three things: making sure your personal information is there, your CV is visually appealing, and you demonstrate that the CV is crafted or tailored to the job that you are applying for, and it's not like a generic CV that you're sending for a role across administration and social media and accounting. It's all kind of the same thing.
The other thing I would say is proofread your CV so that things are clear and no mistakes and typos and spellings and all of that are part of it. And the other thing is just about the contact numbers. Make it international, because Dubai is very global. The HR might be sitting somewhere else recruiting, the agents might be somewhere else. So don't assume anything. Make it an international contact number so that you can be reachable from anywhere. If you're looking at multinationals, not everybody has a localized HR team, for instance. So that's one pointer. Give out your contacts in terms of Skype or any of the other ones, and make sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to mark. It doesn't have to match the CV you send, but it has to be much and such the same thing, like the same jobs, the same year of service between. If you say 2002 to 2005 on your CV, make sure LinkedIn says the same thing. I know there's a school of thought and there's an argument that people shouldn't look at LinkedIn profile, but the application they've made. But, we as recruiters, we might not, but line managers do. And it's very difficult. It's a process of education on that front. So if you want to have the best chance, just have some consistency between your public profile and your CV.
Yeah. And on LinkedIn, if I can just very quickly add, pay attention to details. So for instance, if a person has three jobs, and under each job on LinkedIn, they have a few kind of responsibilities or accountabilities or whatever, they've used, what we see is how they've formatted it. So the bullets that they've used for each job is completely different. And what this sometimes conveys is that person hasn't paid attention and there's no consistency. They haven't reviewed their own profile. And so these things matter, so you are representing yourself. And if you're not paying attention to the detail when you're representing yourself, why would you pay attention to the details when you are part of a company?
The other thing is, look, this is a process of elimination, not a process of selection, especially when you're in thousands potentially, then it's a process of elimination. So you should minimize the chances of you being eliminated rather than you being selected. If that's clear, yeah, there's a slight difference with that.
Yeah, and I think I just want to point out to all the candidates and job seekers who are listening, there's this confusion, and I know it arises. I've had the same confusion in the past, but I want to explain it. So LinkedIn, updating your LinkedIn, some people feel that if I update my LinkedIn as opposed to my CV, then people from my company, especially my manager, might see, oh, he's updating his LinkedIn. He's probably looking for a job. Does he want to leave? All those things. But to be honest, it's not that you're updating your LinkedIn to look for a job. You should be updating your LinkedIn anyway, whether or not you're looking for a job, because it is your standing in the market. It also keeps you accountable and responsible to your own job and your profession, because what you're telling the industry out there, like for example, you could tell your company, well, I'd like to be invited to speak at events. So a lot of companies look at LinkedIn profiles to see if this person matches the kind of profile they want for a speaker, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be that way. Please update your LinkedIn profile, because yes, people do look at the LinkedIn profile. If I type in your name today in Google, the first link that shows up is your LinkedIn, not your Facebook, not your Twitter, not anything else. So bear that in mind.
Yeah.
And I think you raise a very valid point. So I wanted to go to a point you made earlier in the same section of the podcast. You mentioned about how you take a certain amount of time to make sure you provide the right kind of candidate. So on average, Desma and Elrona, on average, when you receive the first brief from the client, how long does it take you to actually provide the client with a list of potential candidates?
So I'll just walk you through the process, right? So
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking, and I know this is probably candidates will be wondering, yeah, but this is for companies. I'm like, no, I want candidates here and job seekers to understand the timelines. A lot of times they get frustrated with why is it taking so long?
yeah,
So
fair
this
enough.
is for you to understand. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So, sorry, if I can just very quickly go back, I just remembered that I should have mentioned this when you're doing your CV, is when you write responsibilities for each role, quantify as much as possible. So don't talk about, like recruited for so many positions, like quantify how many positions that you've recruited over the past couple of, past few years, or if you're a social media person, then, how have you increased engagement and things like that. So look for opportunities to highlight, quantify what you actually achieve, because that's what will really be appealing to clients. And so, okay, so now flipping back to your question about the process.
Before you flip back, the other thing is because it's about cost saving. So if you have, engaged in any cost saving sort of initiatives, quantify that as well. Like save, 500,000 or 100,000, whatever the numbers are. Try and be more metric in your presentation than in words. That's one thing. And also your job titles. Just make sure that your job titles are not exaggerated on LinkedIn and then underplayed on your CV, right? They should also be matching. So that was another point I wanted to make, because a lot of people call themselves managers, but when they send their CV, they're executives. So, we don't want to have those patients, because as I said, it's a process of elimination. Recruiters also don't have so much time to go and verify which one is the right job description, job title. So just make sure of that.
Yeah. So going back to your question on the process, I'm glad you asked this, and actually that's a really good point that, candidates get frustrated. And so going through the process is, quite a smart thing to do. So from the time that we get approval from, or we agree with the client that we are going to recruit for them, the first thing we do is prepare a job ad, which includes, what the role is, what the responsibilities of the role is, what the remit of the role is. So as much information as possible without copy pasting a job description in the ad. And, we invite candidates to apply, and we have, we give them a good maybe week or 2 weeks to send in their applications. So somebody who sent it in immediately may not necessarily hear back, within the next couple of weeks. So depending on the last day to apply. So for instance, if I today is, let's say, the 22nd, and I say send all applications by the end of the month. So I want to make sure that the person who's applied right at the beginning and the person that has applied right at the end gets a fair chance, because this is the time that I've given. So once we receive all the applications, we go through a process of elimination. And here's where we have, that 40, 90 seconds to look at a CV to see, does your executive summary talk about why you're fit for the role? We also obviously receive a lot of CVs through email. So make sure that the email that you address to the recruiter, again, sort of summarizes, maybe where you found the job and why you're a suitable candidate for the role. Then we get a lot of CVs that have an attachment, but the email is blank. So
really?
Yeah, tons actually. Or
My goodness. So they just assume that you know what this is for.
Yeah, and we're recruiting for multiple positions.
Even the subject is not clear, like, what they're
Applying for a job.
Yeah, applying for a job, and then they'll send the CV, and it's a blank email.
Oh,
so,
goodness.
So yeah,
that would this person get eliminated? High chances. Again, we try to be fair. We try to look at all of the CVs, but in the interest of time, to move quickly, somebody else who's made an additional effort, or actually just even done the right thing, would probably get preference. So that's number one. So then we collect all of the CVs, we review them, and we do a pre-screening round. So we speak to every single candidate, and we do what is called a pre-screening, which is basically just getting to know the candidate better, understanding their experience, understanding their fit for the role, and just a bit of feedback from the candidates. So a lot of time when we reach out, they don't answer the phone, which I understand not everyone's available 100% of the time, but then they never ring back either to even check. You're an active job seeker, return phone calls. So you've lost an opportunity there. And then when we speak to them, you can tell whether someone's enthusiastic for a role or they're not. So, while some candidates are like, yes, that's me, I can make myself available. Let me know what what can I do for you to kind of help me through this process. We have a lot of candidates that are like, yeah, I did apply. Oh, sorry, can you just call me back later? Or, like, I'm sleeping. And so we're also kind of thrown off, because we are on the side, we want to promote good candidates. So that takes a bit of time to get through the number of applications that we get through. We don't immediately send out emails to tell someone that they haven't made the cut, because they may be good for a second round, maybe just not initially. So if we send regret emails, is what we call it, to say that you haven't quite made the cut too early on in the process, it means that we're not going to move forward with them. And we hang on to candidates because we have to go through this process of elimination. And that, you can appreciate, that can take another couple of weeks. And so straight away, that's a month gone. So if someone's not hearing back for a whole month, there's what's happening. There's a lot of work happening in the background. And then we set up these, once we complete screening interviews and sort of shortlist the first round, we send all of these shortlisted candidates to the company or to the hiring manager, and they sift through the CVs. And maybe out of, the 10 or 20 CVs that we send, they will then further break that down into, maybe they want to see 5 people. What we do as an additional step is we actually get on a call with the client to walk them through the CV, because sometimes, what they read from a CV and the reality of the candidate is very different. So we want to make sure that we're like genuinely representing the candidates. So we walk through the candidates' resumes and CVs with them and talk about why we believe that they fit the role that is being recruited for. And of course, we have, back and forth discussion with the client, and, they'll say no to some candidates, and we try to understand from their perspective why. And, again, to give candidates perspective, some of the feedback is, oh, I've looked at their LinkedIn profile and it's just not up to scratch. And so the hiring managers will very quickly make that one decision and one, they'll arrive at that decision from looking at their LinkedIn profile. So it is very important to ensure that you have kind of, crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, because you have one chance to make a first great impression.
Right,
So
it's very valuable.
yeah, and so then once that happens, we then schedule the one-to-one interviews with the hiring manager. And, obviously pre-COVID, this was in person, but now it's on Zoom. And with that comes a whole host of how to prepare for a Zoom interview. And, I'm just going to very shamelessly plug in our blog. We actually did a blog on this, on how to prepare for a Zoom interview. And if I can just touch upon the points very quickly. The blog's on our website, by the way. So preparing in terms of ensuring that you have your laptop or whatever, your phone or however you are attending the interview, you have that set up to make sure that you are, you can be heard correctly. And you can be heard. Your voice comes through correctly. You're not sitting in a place that has no lighting and, your clothes are drying behind your back, or, you have like a messy bed, for instance, or something like that. So just make sure it's a clutter-free environment, and it's set up with the right lighting. You're of course dressed appropriately for a Zoom interview. You are there on time and you log in, and, if the interviewer is not there, like send him or her a note to say, I'm here, I'm ready. And so they know that you're on point with the whole process. Prepare, so, maybe try and do a Zoom meeting with, or a Skype interview with a friend or a family member, so that they can tell you that they can see you correctly and they can hear you, so practice all of this before you actually get in on the interview.
And one point to add to that is research the company.
Yes.
Don't just say, oh yeah, I have looked at your website. That's not research, okay? Research means you've looked at everything that is available in the public domain, and also the job description that may have been shared with you. Depends, every recruiter doesn't have a job description. We do, but doesn't mean that they all do. But research the company, see what's in the public domain, see if they have some recent press news articles. Just, that's going to be your next employer, yeah, potentially. So you should know everything that you can know about this company, so you sound more knowledgeable and prepared than just being, attending the interview. So preparedness and being thorough in your research about the company and the job role is very important before you, log into that Zoom call. So please take the time to do that.
Yeah. And going back to the process, once the client has interviewed all of the candidates, they then go through their own elimination process or selection process that can take a week, a couple of weeks. So we've already hit, right now we're at like 1.5 weeks, so 1 month and a couple of weeks, and then the elimination process, the selection process, which is another 2 weeks. So that's 2 months. So from a candidate's perspective, if they haven't heard for 2 months, I understand that it can be really frustrating because you need to, you want to know, but all of this happens in the background. And so it's not that the recruiters are just kind of not saying anything, they are. Having said that, if you do really want to find out and you're curious, follow up with the recruiter, give them a call, drop them an email, but make sure that give the recruiter some time to do their job. So for instance, if you attend an interview with the recruiter, don't follow up in 2 days to say, I'm expecting to hear back what's going on. Because 2 days is a very, very short period of time. So give them a good amount of time, or even at the end of the interview with the recruiter to say, look, how long do you think it would take, so that I can follow up. And if the recruiter says 3 weeks, then come back in 3 weeks.
And also ask, sometimes recruiters usually close an interview or a screening to say, what are the next steps? But if that's missed, put that in your list of questions to ask, saying, what is the next steps? The other thing about, I would just want to go back to the point where, let's say you've made the cut and the recruiter calls you your impression starts from there, right? So how you attend that call, how you respond, how attentive you are, and how responsive you are all adds up to build that best representation of your candidate. So every touch point that you experienced in that recruitment process is a touch point of making a good impression. So, that's how you have to see it, because again, from a process of elimination to move to a process of being selected, it's a journey. So you have to make sure that each touch point you do your best representation. Even
Yeah,
if
and I
you
think for candidates, I think right now that's the main thing. A lot of candidates, whoever's listening, I want you to understand. See, recruiters, HR managers, they're not bad people. They're not evil. They're not trying to specifically not give you the job, you sitting in, Karama or something. It's nothing like that. And even though I'm contradicting myself that you're not a number, at the end of the day, they have to provide a certain level of person to the hiring company. And so there's a lot, and you yourself have seen as a candidate, there are thousands of people who sometimes apply for one job, and no recruitment company or agent or one person has the kind of stamina or time to go through 1,000 CVs. So, you need to understand that it is all part of the same market, the same circumstances and all. You are just as eager to get the job as a recruiter is eager to place the job. So
yes,
there's no personal vendettas here. There's no
yeah,
bad recruitment company or whatever, unless they are unethical, which is a whole different conversation. So
yeah.
on that note, thank you so much for all the feedback so far. Because you mentioned all of this, I want to now go to the next part of the podcast, which is very, very just so that candidates can understand. So when the CV was one part, we understood that. Let's now go to the candidate themselves. We spoke about LinkedIn and Zoom and the CV. So the
Mhm.
candidate themselves, what should they do as a professional to make themselves stand out? Now, I want to just throw in one point here, which is, and I've been talking about this throughout the Corona situation, throughout the COVID-19 over the past 8 months, etc. Is that you hear a lot of things like, oh, during Corona, I'm going to upskill myself. I'm going to upskill this. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn. But the thing is, what I've understood and what I've seen a lot of people is that unfortunately, because nobody tells them what to learn, a lot of people don't know what to look for and what are the right things to learn. So they just go headlong and they start doing courses. Okay, but what courses? How do you know that that's the right course? How do you? So everybody, for example, as much as I've seen this, I'm in digital marketing. I hire digital marketers, right? And I see a lot of people doing courses on HubSpot and Google's free certifications. Now, those are very nice courses. It gives you a basic understanding of digital, but those are not the courses that I would hire somebody for. So really, when you say upskill yourself, what do you mean by upskill? So I, for example, in digital, I give people advice: do this course, do that course if you want to upskill. Yes, it might cost you, maybe 100 dirhams, not free, but it will give you 1,000 dirhams worth of education. So primarily do this. But what does it mean to upskill? So like this, what do you feel are things that the candidates can do themselves outside the Zoom, LinkedIn, and CV area to make themselves stand out?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Upskilling during these times, really makes you stand apart from other candidates. I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, right? So if somebody wants to upskill themselves to make sure that they are a better candidate, what I would advise is to maybe reach out to hiring managers for roles that you aspire to be placed in, or to be sort of placed in, and ask the hiring managers what they would recommend based on your line of work. So for instance, if you are in HR, the upskilling courses might be different than if you're in digital marketing or if you're in finance. Having said that, sometimes it is also nice to upskill across a different discipline, because that gives you a different perspective, that gives you a different understanding. And so it really depends on what the objective of upskilling yourself is. If you're just choosing to upskill for yourself just for the sake of it and having courses that you said, right, I've done 10 courses, you have to think about what value that those courses are going to bring to you in your professional development or in your career. So it's not a question of quantity, it's the question of like, I did this because this is how I wanted to grow in my career. So again, it reflects that you've taken time to think about where you're actually going and then done courses. And it can also be free, it doesn't have to be paid.
Yeah.
This is how you've picked a course to do. So even in the selection of the course that you choose reflects that you've put some thought into it.
So I would also add another data point. Look at the job adverts that are out there in your field. See what the job requirements are. If they're saying certain skills or, that they are requesting, maybe it's communication skills, or maybe it's, drawing or some system skills. So that also should give you some pointers as to what to upskill on. I think, doing some training on how to do good interviews, that was always going to be handy. So you're, fresh and have a toolkit ready for yourself, how to write a good CV. These are like your basic courses that you could do as a candidate, not necessarily related to your job, but it just gives you what are the recent trends. There are always thinkers and thought leaders in every area of discipline, right? Follow their blogs, follow their accounts, and see what they're sharing, what they're learning, so you can at least have an idea about where the future of your industry is going. Start doing those type of research. I think some things that are not appreciated is you have the time, you have the opportunity, and thankfully, thanks to technology and the digital world, you have access to a lot of trainings that perhaps in the past were expensive, was, not something you could reach out to. So it's just about, taking that all together and prioritizing what works for you and putting that list together and start working towards it. So it shouldn't be like this approach where you just pick up everything that comes your way because you've seen a sponsored ad and you go for it. Have a strategic thought about what upskilling works for you. I know a lot of companies have performance management and they've put development and never had the chance to do them. Pursue those. So, fair different avenues to go at. And, that will keep you busy for a while, I think.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is to own your own employability, right? So plan your own career and then go after it.
There's a bit of ego involved, because people think that, oh, I have 20 years of experience, I know everything in my
You don't.
business. Well, no, not
So I
necessary.
can tell you,
If
I
you,
don't.
And no, and but again, I'll give you my example, and this is coming to your point, Silba, is because one example of doing courses, I think maybe Desma mentioned this as well. You don't have to do courses that are relevant to your specific job function, not job role. Because, for example, I'm a digital marketer. I had a digital division, right? However, just because I'm a digital marketer doesn't mean I'm good at project management specifically.
Exactly.
So I can do, for example, a course on project management, which will help my
Exactly.
digital role, but they're not related again.
exactly.
So, and suddenly, so I might have done 50 digital courses, but I'm horrible at managing a project itself, which has nothing to do with digital. It's more people management, it's more time management, it's more agile methodology. And there you go. There's another concept, agile methodology. There's agile certifications, which again have nothing to do with the role I have, So I think when you're looking at courses to do, and look at the JD. What is the job description asking? Is the job description saying, okay, we need somebody who is an MBA who handles, high level decisions for the company when it comes to project management, however, has to have agile methodology. Now you might be a project manager, but you've never done agile. So there you go. Go and get a certification in Agile. Yes, it might cost you, but but you also have free courses online for Agile. Go to YouTube,
Yeah.
go to LinkedIn, do the free courses, and then go for the actual paid certification because now you've done the course yourself and
Yeah.
you can make an attempt. So there's all these ways. So you're absolutely right, and I think it also comes to, like you said, you are your own job manager. You are your own
Yeah.
recruitment manager.
I always say own your own employability. Everything you do and say reflects you as a person. Uh,
Agreed.
and
No.
so be conscious of that when you interact with a recruiter or when you interact with a client. And remember, recruiters are on your side. We want to,
Yeah.
we're not anti-candidates. We are so pro really good candidates. So tell us why you are right for the role, and we will try to do our best to see that through for you, and that works for us as well.
I have to share an experience where I, once once we send these candidates, like Desma mentioned, and they're shortlisted, we also do like an interview prep, and we tell people how to prep for the interview so that it's fresh in their minds and they have, key points to mention. And I can tell you half of that stuff doesn't take is not always taken on, and the ones who do get shortlisted.
Yeah, actually, that's so true. Because you think we're taking all of this time to ensure that you are prepped for an interview. So we're like, taking time out of our own sort of schedule, because it's not our responsibility really to prep you for an interview, that's yours, but we want to make sure that you are representing your best self. So we take that time. And then unfortunately, when we get feedback from the hiring manager, they point out things that didn't go so well. And, it leaves us wondering, because this is something that we did cover in the prep, but it wasn't taken on board by the candidate. So again, not a candidate bashing session, but it's these little things that make such a big difference.
Yeah.
I wanted to now talk about, so we've covered a lot of things regarding candidates, job seeking, LinkedIn, Zoom, everything else, and personification, personal growth. Now I want to go to high level management or executive recruitment. You have a lot of people in this region who, and in fact worldwide, in senior positions, director level, C level, executive level, who have also been, axed or have lost their jobs or the company shut down. I know they are also looking for roles. Now, this is a different segment of the market when it comes to job seeking. You have people who have, like we mentioned before, a significant amount of experience, a significant amount of management experience. Obviously, cost companies a lot of money, but then that's because they bring in that kind of revenue as well. Now, what should people like this keep in mind? Now, bear in mind that a lot of these people have not done their CVs for a long time because they've
Yeah.
been in positions and stuff. So it's not only the CV; it's also networking. It's also other aspects like thought leadership, etc. What advice would you give them, people who are looking for jobs today, who have maybe held director positions or C-level positions in a market that's very saturated and have a lot of other people who are directors and C-level? So how do you stand out in that aspect?
So I think, if they haven't done their CV in a long time, that's a good place to start, because the world of CVs has changed, and they may have 20 years of experience or 15 years of experience and they've achieved what they have achieved, which is fantastic. But they are, when they have to present themselves as a candidate, it's that one document that gets them started. So I've seen a few exec level CVs that is, they just put everything that they've ever done. And so you have to sort of present yourself in your CV just like how you would present in a boardroom. It has to be crisp. It has to have all of the right information on it, and get somebody else to proofread it for you. Get somebody else to like review it and make sure that it has enough information because without being overcrowded, because you have achieved it all and you obviously want to represent everything, but you still have to do what any other candidate in any other position does, which is prepare a profile that's relevant for a role.
Yeah, because now you're
Yeah.
an active candidate rather than a passive candidate, which in a normal time you would be headhunted for these roles, but now here you are in the job market applying for these roles. A lot of the time, senior positions are not always advertised. They are through the network and through referrals. So that's something that you will have to invest time and build that network and that referrals. So, that takes a little bit of a process, but you can definitely do that. A lot of people have got opportunities. And I think you have to think wide, like, not just Dubai, maybe Abu Dhabi, maybe Ras Al Khaimah, cast a wider net so that you're able to get more opportunities that way.
That's a
So,
very good point because I'm a
really,
person who's done that. I'm based in Russell Khema and I worked 20 odd years in around the world, even in Dubai. And the opportunity that came up for me, which I love by the way, it's a director position. It's a lot of responsibility. I handle a global remit. And where did it mean? It meant I had to move to a place I had never considered, which was Russell Khema, a tiny little town that people go for a holiday to. Now, normally you would never look for a job there. You wouldn't think. You'd think Dubai, Abu Dhabi, maybe Jeddah, Makkah, whatever, but you wouldn't think of Ras Al Khaimah. And yet there is the job that I've been in for 2.5 years. I hope to stay there longer, all those things. So get out of the comfort zone, get out of what you think is
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
and also I want to jump in here, Silba, because I wanted to mention the same thing. I think I put this in my LinkedIn post. People with a lot of experience, particularly people who have maybe 15, 20 years of experience, a lot of times I receive CVs, and I've even seen CVs where they put 10 bullet points for the job they held in 2001,
Yeah.
you know, and nobody needs to know that. Nobody cares
Yeah.
what you did in 2001
Exactly.
unless you were a NASA scientist. It's not going to matter. So if you were, for example, I saw a CV just 1 month ago, and God bless their soul, they put a lot of hard work into it. But it was a role where they were the admin assistant in a company in 1999, and they put 10 bullet points for what they were doing in 1999 as an admin assistant. But their CV today, the current job they're in, they're the head of admin. So if I'm hiring for a head of admin and that's the CV you sent me, why will I care what you've done in 1999? So keep in mind, everyone who's listening,
Yeah.
your bullets, the two things. I personally, and you may disagree, it's fine, but as a hiring manager, I want to see maybe maximum maybe 8 bullets that really go into your main responsibilities of your current and previous jobs. And if you have jobs that have been older than maybe 12, 15 years, just put the title of the job. I don't need to know what you did there, because if it's admin assistant, I know what you've done.
Yeah.
I don't care. Even if it's in marketing, if you were a marketing executive in 2005, then you were a marketing executive in 2005. If you're applying for a director's position, I don't care what you did as a marketing executive. Focus
Yeah.
on the job description. If the job description has put 20 points of what they need, then your bullet points in your job currently should focus on responsibilities that reflect what the job description requires from you.
Exactly.
And don't just put everything you're doing. We don't care about everything you do, because as a hiring manager for that role, I know what you're probably doing in that job.
Yeah.
So don't mimic what I'm doing in my mind. I want to see what you bring to this role from your
Yeah.
current job.
The rule of thumb I would also suggest is look at, like you said, Anthony, look at the job description, see what it says. If it says, 20 years of experience and 10 years of management experience, focus on
Yeah.
the 10 years or the recent experience. No need to put the whole 20, right? So focus
Yes.
on what the job description is asking of you, then what you want to share to the employer or the hiring manager. It's more like just share what they are asking
Yeah.
rather than what you're telling.
I also think
Yeah.
in these senior positions, chances are that you have been a hiring manager yourself, and you would have hired a team yourself. So use that intelligence to kind of inform what another hiring manager would look at in your CV as well. Would you be interested in what the admin assistant did in 1999? Probably not, so therefore don't put that in your own CV.
Agreed. Agreed. Very, very true. And I think it also comes down to ego. And again, I've mentioned this before, but I want to go a bit into it right now. A lot of you who are listening, if you're in a director position or a very senior position, oftentimes you will not take the advice from others because you think that, I'm a senior person, I'm a hiring manager, I know what to do, I know what I should be putting out there. But really, you know what? The fact that even in the companies you work in, you work as a team, you have a boss, you have your peers, and you'll collectively take decisions on things. You've never taken a decision yourself on a big project. It's always a team involved. So your role in another company where you're probably going to get a 15% hike in your salary, maybe a senior position, get other people to vet that for you. Get other people to vet you as a candidate. So for example, because you are a director in X industry in X position, you will have peers who are in the same, who are your friends or your colleagues, etc., in other companies. Now, send your CV to them. Say, listen, hey, Bob, can you have a look at my CV?
Mm.
I'm looking for this position, and you're in a different company. Maybe you can see something that I'm not seeing. And that will help a lot, because that's how I learned. Like like around maybe 6 years ago, I met with a friend of mine who is a global head of digital for a company, multinational. They work in Switzerland, and we had coffee and stuff, and we were talking about my job, and he's like, "Oh, cool. Okay, so show me your CV." So I instantly took it on my phone and I showed it to him, and he immediately said, "Anthony, this is very nice, but where are your accomplishments? I can see your achievements that you did this, but how did you actually make a revenue
Exactly.
difference? I don't see that. I mean, your CV looks like any director in digital. What specifically did you do that made the company money?" And
Yeah.
I thought, my goodness, I had never thought of that. But it took somebody else in the same position as me to point that out.
Yeah.
In my ego and in my whole self love, I had thought that this is what people need to know, but no, that's not what people need
Exactly.
to know. There's a lot more. So ask your peers.
I also I agree with that 100%, right? And I also think like don't be afraid to kind of do something different. And let me give you an example by to explain what I mean. So for S&K Consulting, we were looking for freelancers to work with us, and like I said earlier, we take a lot of time in ensuring that we vet the candidates that come through. So what we had asked for was for everyone to send us a short video clip introducing themselves and talking about their unique HR perspective. I think it's very simple. And we, of the hundreds of CVs we received, maybe like 10 or 15, actually maybe even less than 10 candidates took the time to make that short clip. And that says something. So they, from the other CVs, they were really, really good candidates. And we went back to them individually to say, if you haven't seen the requirement, can you please take a few minutes to just, send us a video introducing yourself and your unique HR perspective. And most didn't come back. So this is doing something different. Normally you would just send out a CV, but here's an opportunity to make yourself stand out even more. So make that effort. And these are senior candidates as well. So don't be afraid to kind of, follow a new brief and try something different. Like they say, the definition of insanity is to do exactly the same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
I think, look at what is asked of you in terms of the job application and please follow that. Like, don't be under the impression that what you have to offer is good enough, because
Yeah.
it's an employer's market. It is about standing out. It is about differentiating, and it is about, avoiding the elimination. So even
Yeah.
if there are people that have worked for 20 odd years in an organization and now are back in the job market, and their job market at that time was very different to the job market now. So, like, get familiar with what is the recent ways of recruitment and hiring and so on. So, you're geared up for this new wave of job opportunities. And the opportunity might not be the same as what you had in the past. It might be different. It might be, you might have a potential in a startup environment rather than a large, well-established organization. What does that mean for you as a job? What
Agreed.
do you have to wear? What is different about the environment that you work in? So, you're not going to be disadvantaged because the organization is not what you're familiar with.
Yeah,
So,
that's a very, very good point, because some people assume, and this is a completely natural assumption, you have this habit that I worked in two big multinationals for 10 years. How can I work for a small startup of four people? Well, no,
Exactly.
you're looking at a job. Look at the fact that two very important things to keep in mind, especially during the COVID-19 situation. One, you need to put food on your table and on the table of your kids. Okay. So don't let the ego of a large company on your CV hold that over your head. The second thing is, a career isn't made up of massive organization. It's made up of what you brought to the organization, small or big. So at the end of the day, can you imagine if somebody 20 years ago had said no to Uber because Uber only had two people?
Yes, exactly.
But look, and Kareem, when Kareem opened up, I still remember 2012, when Kareem first started here, people were laughing at it. It's like, how are they going to take on Uber? It's just three guys, Mudassir and the other two guys, and Javed. And I'm like, and Junaid. And I'm thinking, at that time, I'm like, yeah, it's a bit risky. But I realized today that Uber had to buy out Kareem as long as it wanted to survive.
yeah.
And now, and some people who worked in that company from the start became overnight millionaires because they were given shares in the company.
Yeah.
So, don't think of it as, oh, it's a startup. Oh, it's only four guys. My goodness, you could be part of the next $1 billion unicorn. Don't, uh, don't
This
short.
could be the next the best opportunity you've had. You
Yes.
Startup is where growth mindset exists, right? Every other organization is about survival, sustainability, keeping the numbers going. But this is where you have growth, you have expansion, you have, a new, I don't know, it's a very fresh perspective. I think,
Which is why you shouldn't be afraid to do something different, because
yes.
how else would you demonstrate that you have this fresh perspective and you
Yeah.
are able to step outside of your comfort zone to bring value based on your like 20 years of experience, but you want to bring value to this new organization.
Okay, I'll let you continue. I'll let you finish that, but I wanted to just finish the startup point in is that I'm seeing a lot of people ask for jobs, or sorry, a lot of hiring managers looking at hiring people, and I'm noticing one trend: one out of every 8 jobs I'm seeing has the words beneficial if you have startup experience. Now, even if they're looking for a large company, even if it's a big multinational like let's say GE or Siemens or somebody else, when they're looking for startup experience, it's not because they're a startup. It's because they're probably starting a new division. Maybe they're
Yeah,
doing a new venture. Now, would you not like to be part of a startup that like that? But you would not be hired because you said no to startups before.
yeah, exactly.
So
Be
there you go. Look at how.
open-minded. Yeah.
Yes, be open-minded. And remember, you're looking for a job. Don't be beggars can't be choosers, for want of a better phrase. You know. So sorry. So
Yeah.
Desma, you were going to say.
Yeah, I guess I was just kind of reiterating what we were talking about in terms of that startup experiences, and start being, it's not necessarily, in my view, about being part of a startup or not. It's about reflecting yourself as a candidate, right? The fact that you've been in a startup demonstrates that you can go and play and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do what you need to grow the company. And that's what people want. So usually in a startup environment, that's what you're asked to do. You're asked to wear many hats and you're asked to multitask. And, it takes a different kind of personality to thrive in a startup environment. And that's what companies are looking for. And maybe if you haven't had the startup experience, find a way to demonstrate that you are willing to still do that, regardless of the fact that you are in a director or an exec position. Can you move the company forward? If
Yeah.
yes, how? That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. So ultimately, I think as a wrap up from this whole conversation, things to keep in mind. Number one, make yourself marketable. Make yourself. Uh, Imagine if you were selling a product and you were that
You are
product. What
you
would
are
be
the product.
states?
Exactly.
Yeah. What are the benefits you bring to the person buying you, which is the hiring company? What is the things that they're looking for? Like if you look for a car, that everyone knows a car has 4 wheels and will have an engine and will drive you from A to B. But you don't go buying a car for that. You buy it. Okay, how is this car going to benefit me? What are the features that I want from this car aside from all the expected things? So in your CV, in your LinkedIn, the expected things aren't necessary. The things that you bring to the table for the job you're looking for are. So focus on, look at the templates online, look at the best CVs that you can find that help and all, and look at Canva, look at PowerPoint, look at Word. They all have built-in templates that are really good. Look at what
Yeah.
works. Ask your peers, ask your friends in the same kind of industries, what CV do they have? Look for examples. Like I have a number of friends who have asked me for examples of my CV, and they've molded their CV on mine. And because they weren't afraid to ask. And so look at that. Second is build your persona up, upskill yourself, do the right courses, do the right courses. Don't just do courses. Do courses that match up to the kind of job descriptions in your industry right now and the vacancies that are happening. If you're a senior person, then be willing to take a chance on smaller companies, but also go into your network, go into your peers, speak to them, ask for their advice. Networking is what helps a lot of people get their roles, etc. But most importantly, make the whole job seeking situation an actual full-time job. Somebody gave me some advice years and years ago, and I'll never forget that advice. It said, look, if you're looking for a job and you're waking up at 6 a.m. to look for the job, remember there are 500 people waking up at 5 a.m. to look for the same job. Treat it like that, because there are people out there who are more desperate than you and who are more hardworking than you. So you have to become that person. Full-time job. Give it the respect it needs. Don't just send out some CVs on LinkedIn and say I've done my work, right?
Yeah.
And this was the harsh reality that I was speaking of when I said, when all of us said we're not going to be nice to you in the podcast. We want you to get jobs. And so I want to take this time to say thank you very much, Desma and Elrona, for all your advice and all the information. And thank you to S&K Consulting for taking the time out to give this much needed advice, not just to job seekers, but I know that there's a lot of hiring managers out there who are probably also learning from this situation about the other side, who are learning about what candidates are going through, what fears they have, what issues they have. Maybe they're not savvy enough to understand how the job market works, and hopefully this podcast has helped all of you. So once again, thank you, Desma. Thank you, Aruna. We're going to have another podcast soon where we'll talk about the companies themselves and what companies needs to keep in mind, when they're looking at the job market and hiring in a corona situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for summarizing that so brilliantly, Anthony. We chatted for a good an hour and 10 at least. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that was very, very well summarized. And I just want to add one final piece of advice is to candidates is to conduct yourself gracefully throughout the process, even if you get a rejection. Be graceful about receiving a rejection and thank the person who you've spoken to for the opportunity.
From my side, I think all candidates should be open to positions, whether it's full-time, part-time, just be a bit more open-minded about that as well.
Yeah.
And one thing I would say is in Dubai or any part of the world, there's a lot of, wrongdoings as well when it comes towards candidates. So be mindful of that. You don't have to pay for for your CV to be shown. You don't have to you don't have registration fees. These are illegal. You are not supposed to pay for your own visa. You're not supposed to be working on visit visa. So watch out for these legal pitfalls. Please look, if you get selected, ask for an offer, be more vigilant and diligent in those processes, because after putting all the hard work of getting a job and then these areas of onboarding you miss out on, then it's not it's a bitter experience, and you have to like take that with a pinch of salt and move. It's going to be harder, so please make sure that those parts as well you are going to look after and be mindful about.
That's
But
true. That's very good. That's very good advice there, especially in a job market where people are really desperate right now because of the situation.
yeah,
Yeah, so don't be taken advantage of.
yeah,
Especially when recruiters say you have to pay this registration fee to for your CV to be put on top. No, that's
Yeah.
illegal. Don't do that. Report it if anything.
yeah. And don't be disheartened if you've not got answers back, if you've not made through the interviews. It's a long journey. It's a process. You might get lucky in the beginning, or it might be towards the end. But stay positive, stay strong, and give it your best when you apply for any job that you are keen to join.
Indeed. So, how do people, if anybody wants the services of S&K Consulting, how does somebody get in touch with you? What's your website? What's the different ways? Can you please just very quickly tell us about that?
Sure. So our website is www.snk.ae. That's sugarnancykilo.ae. All of our contact information you can get that through the website. Please follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram and Facebook. We post a lot of content for candidates and for clients every day. So, there is a lot of information on preparing for interviews, how to kind of stay positive and what you can do if you've been made redundant, for instance. So do follow us on social.
Oh, yes, I know. I mean, I follow you guys. And, even though I've been in the industry for so long, the stuff I read on your profiles that, I had no idea about or I didn't think about before. So from a recruiter's point or even from a vacancy point, I think it's great that you're taking the effort to do this and educate the market. So I wish you guys all the success, S&K
Thank you so
Consulting.
much.
I
Thank
wish both
you,
of you
Anthony.
that more people will get in touch with you. Any companies out there looking for an HR consultancy to help you with not just your recruitment, but other aspects of HR, please reach
Yeah.
out to us in consulting. I personally vouch for them. They're definitely excellent at their jobs. And to all of you listening, I hope you had some education from this podcast. I hope it helped you it will help you in your career. And I wish you all the best in the job scene. I know it's difficult right now because of Corona, but don't worry. Things will come out good in the end. You will succeed, whether it's here or somewhere else. This is Tony Khan, the marketing dude, signing off. If any of you want to follow me on LinkedIn or get more of my insights, just go to Anthony J. Permal on LinkedIn and you will find me there. I'll put the link in my podcast along with the link of S&P Consulting as well. Goodbye and see you later, Desma and Silba as well.
Cheers.